trauma vibrating in you now doesn't need time. It needs these 3 stages in sequence. In the next few minutes, you'll understand why that tightness in your chest doesn't dissolve, why the solar plexus remains contracted, why the exhaustion has no visible cause, even after years of therapy, meditation, and self-knowledge. There is a forgotten physiological trail, validated by recent neuroscience, but intuited by ancient traditions in other languages, that reactivates the body's self-healing intelligence when walked in the right order. You've tried everything and something still remains stuck, not because you failed, but because these 3 stages were overshadowed by a culture of shortcuts and the dangerous myth that you just have to wait. If you close this video now, you'll keep carrying that invisible weight, because what's missing isn't more time, it's the complete sequence, and you're about to receive it for the first time in a whole, clear, and applicable way. But before revealing this trail, you need to understand exactly why it never reached you. These 3 stages aren't abstract concepts, they're physiological portals that rebuild the body from the inside out. The first reactivates somatic safety. The second releases the charge that was imprisoned. The third rebuilds who you are when survival is no longer the only option. Each depends on the previous one. Each carries a specific intelligence, and now you're going to move through them. The body can't heal in the middle of a storm. It needs to feel the threat has passed before it can let go of what got stuck. Peter Levine spent decades observing animals in the wild and discovered something unsettling. When a gazelle escapes a predator, its body shakes intensely for a few minutes, releasing all the accumulated adrenaline and cortisol. Then it goes back to grazing as if nothing happened. The trauma was processed, discharged, and dissolved. Humans don't do that. We suppress the shaking through cognitive control, through shame, through fear of seeming fragile. And the defensive energy remains frozen inside the nervous system, vibrating like an alarm that never turns off. The first stage begins exactly there, in the reactivation of the ventral vagus nerve, the branch of the parasympathetic system that only functions when the body perceives a real absence of threat. This nerve is responsible for social engagement, the capacity to rest deeply, the feeling of belonging. When it's offline, you live in chronic alert or in dorsal collapse to survival states that prevent any healing. Breath is the first access code, but not just any breath. Low diaphragmatic breathing, which descends to the lower abdomen and activates the dormant solar plexus. In ancient Egyptian traditions, the solar plexus was seen as the portal of the inner fire, the place where Ra dwells within the human body. When this center is contracted by trauma, life force does not circulate, it stagnates, hardens, becomes chronic tension. Restoring descending breath is not a spiritual metaphor, it's a measurable physiological reactivation that reconnects the diaphragm, calms the nervous system, and reopens the flow of vital energy that was blocked. The second gesture is conscious self-induced touch. Place your hands on the belly region, just below the navel, with gentle but firm pressure. This touch signals to the body something it forgot, that it can trust itself, that it is no longer under attack, that protection comes from within. The fascia, that network of connective tissue that envelops every muscle, every organ, every cell, stores bodily memory, and it only responds to physical stimuli, never to words. Conscious touch softens fascial knots, allows the body to feel again, reconnects areas that were dissociated. The third gesture is sensory anchoring of the limbs. Feel the weight of your legs, the texture of your skin, the contact of your feet with the ground. This anchoring brings the nervous system back to the present, undoes the dissociation that keeps you stuck in the frozen time of trauma. Without this architecture of safety, Any attempt to process pain will be perceived by the body as a new invasion, and it will shut down even more. Once somatic safety is minimally restored, the body can finally do what it tried to do at the moment of trauma: release the defensive energy that was imprisoned. And here is the most misunderstood point of all somatic science. Trauma does not need to be remembered to be released. It needs to be felt, not as a cognitive narrative, but as an organic discharge the body has always wanted to complete. At the moment the threat occurred, your body tried to fight, flee, or freeze. But the response was blocked, interrupted, suppressed. The energy got stuck in the nervous system like a frequency that was never discharged. Healing is not reliving the event. Healing is completing the cycle that was left halfway. This discharge happens in subtle and involuntary ways. Spontaneous tremors in the legs that appear without warning. Undulations in the spine that travel through the body like slow waves. Micro-expressions of the face that were never allowed to complete. The mouth that wanted to open but was silenced. The jaw that wanted to release but was restrained. Pendular movements of the torso, forward and back, that rebuilt lost fluidity. These gestures are not planned. They emerge when the body finally feels it has permission to move without being punished, judged, or invaded. Low-frequency vocalizations also operate in this stage. Deep tones, soft groans, deep sighs that vibrate the diaphragm, the solar plexus, and the thoracic fascia, undoing knots that words would never reach. Sound vibration travels through the body like a wave that softens what was hardened, that dissolves what was crystallized. But here is the secret most approaches ignore. This release needs to happen within the nervous system's window of tolerance. It is not dramatic catharsis. It is titration, releasing small portions of charge without overwhelming the body. Peter Levine calls this neurogenic tremor. Shamanic traditions and the mystery rites recognize this as the unbinding, the moment when the initiate lets go of what no longer belongs to them, without needing to name it, without needing to relive it. Ecstatic dance, low-frequency drums, rapid breathing, all of this induced the autonomic discharge that today we call trauma release exercises. The ancients knew, in another language, that the body carries self-healing codes that can only be activated by movement, by sound, by vibration. Neuroscience merely confirmed what has always been there. The body knows how to heal itself. It only needed permission to feel, to shake, to let go. And when you release the brake, when you allow the body to complete the interrupted cycle, something inside you finally opens. When the retained charge is released. When the nervous system finally turns off the threat alarm, something extraordinary happens. The body stops spending energy on defense. And that energy, which was frozen in chronic vigilance, begins to flow again as creation, as curiosity, as spontaneous joy. This is the third stage, the subtlest and the most radical. Because here, you're not just processing pain, you're rebuilding who you are. For years, your identity was molded around the wound. Self-sabotage, difficulty receiving, the inability to sustain pleasure, chronic mistrust, none of this are character flaws. They are survival strategies the body adopted to avoid new threats. While the nervous system remains on alert, any attempt at mindset change or mental reprogramming will be sabotaged by physiology. But when the body feels that the threat has truly passed for real, not just conceptually, it stops defending itself. And the energy that was imprisoned in protection goes back to circulating as life. Carl Jung called this individuation, the process by which the psyche reorganizes after passing through the shadow. In Hermeticism, it is the phase of rubedo, the philosophical gold that emerges after passing through nigredo and albedo. Contemporary neuroscience describes this as directed neuroplasticity, the brain creating new neural pathways no longer based on fear, but on openness. The amygdala calms. The prefrontal cortex strengthens. Heart rate variability increases, a sign that the body has gone back to breathing in safety. But this reconstruction doesn't happen only in the mind. It needs to be embodied, literally. Free and exploratory movements reconnect the body to pleasure, to the sensory curiosity that was lost during years of vigilance. Somatic writing allows the body to tell its new story, not through words, but through gestures, postures, sensations that emerge when you allow the hand to move without cognitive control. Relationships also begin to recalibrate, because now, for the first time, they aren't based on repetition of the wound. They're based on real reciprocity, on genuine presence, on an exchange that isn't mediated by fear of abandonment or invasion. And all of this is measurable in the body. Posture opens. Breath descends and deepens. Facial expression becomes more fluid, more alive. You're not just feeling better, you're inhabiting a different body. And the emerald tablets always knew this. As within, so without. As above, so below. When the interior reorganizes, external reality reconfigures in response. Trauma healing is not only psychological, it is an ontological reinvention. Who you are changes because the body you inhabit has changed, and the world around you begins to reflect this new frequency. Blair woke up every day at 5 in the morning for her hospital shift, but the exhaustion didn't come from work. It came from something that vibrated inside her since as far back as she could remember. A tightness in her chest that never dissolved, a weight that kept her from breathing deeply, a feeling of being constantly on the verge of a collapse that never arrived. She was 59, had worked as a nursing assistant for more than 3 decades, and knew the human body in every possible way except her own. Cognitive therapy helped her understand childhood narratives. Guided meditation brought a few minutes of calm, but the knot remained, stuck between her ribs, vibrating low, silent, unmoving. It was in a casual conversation with a co-worker that Blair first heard about polyvagal theory. The co-worker mentioned a workshop she had taken on somatic trauma release, and something in that phrase, "the body holds what time doesn't dissolve," hit Blair like a punch to the gut. She bought a book that same night. She began reading about the vagus nerve, about frozen autonomic states, about how the body maintains threat frequencies even decades after the real threat passed. And for the first time in years, Blair felt that someone was speaking directly to what she carried. She started slowly, 5 minutes a day of low diaphragmatic breathing, feeling the air descend to the lower abdomen, trying to reach the solar plexus that had always been contracted. At first, nothing happened. But after 2 weeks, something began to soften. Her shoulders dropped. Her jaw, which was always clenched, relaxed for the first time in years. And then came the tremors, small, involuntary, in her legs, in her spine. Blair didn't try to stop them. She let the body do what it had always wanted to do, and she felt, for the first time, that something inside her was finally moving. 3 months later, the changes were undeniable. Blair slept more deeply. Her posture changed. Co-workers commented that she seemed lighter without knowing what had happened. In relationships, she noticed she was no longer reacting to situations with the same automatic defense. Creativity, which had disappeared years ago, returned. She started writing again, something she hadn't done since her 20s. Her body had moved through the 3 stages without her realizing. Somatic safety was restored. the charge was released, and a new identity emerged, not molded by survival, but by recovered freedom. What happened to Blair wasn't magic, it was sequence. And this sequence can now be sealed in your own body. The physical marker that proves integration has begun is simple. The breath finally descends. You feel the air reach the lower abdomen without effort. The solar plexus, which before was armored, now pulses with less tension. The jaw softens. Warmth spreads across the sternum. The signal gesture that anchors this new state is this. Place your right hand on the lower abdomen, just below the navel. Press gently for 30 seconds while you breathe slowly and deeply. This touch signals to the nervous system that safety has been re-established. Repeat this whenever you feel the body returning to chronic alert. And here is your point of return. When the tension begins to rise again, stop. Breathe 3 times into the abdomen. Place your hands on your belly and say mentally, "My body knows the way back." This short phrase, combined with descending breath and conscious touch, reconnects you to the axis. It is not pushing through, it is sealing. A somatic code that prevents the automatic return to the previous pattern and marks in the body the new frequency you've just activated. Time heals nothing, but the body, when guided in the right sequence, retraces the path from pain to the point where creation begins. You've just moved through the 3 stages that most people never complete in full. The restoration of somatic safety, which reconnected the ventral vagus nerve and returned to the body the capacity to feel the absence of threat. The release of the retained charge, which completed the interrupted cycle and dissolved the frequency that vibrated like an alarm since the moment of trauma. And the reconstruction of an identity beyond survival, where the energy that had been imprisoned in defense returned to flow as life, as creation, as presence. These 3 stages are not theory. They are a physiological trail that has always existed, but that has been overshadowed by a culture that prefers shortcuts over depth, speed over sequence. Meister Eckhart, the 13th century German mystic, said something that echoes directly here. God is in all things, but only where you let him in. The body is that place. The body is the temple where sacred intelligence has always dwelled, waiting for you to stop resisting, stop accelerating, stop running, and finally allow it to do what it has always known how to do. Healing is not an act of the mind. It is an act of surrender to what the body already carries as a living code since you were born. And when you let the body lead, when you trust the sequence instead of seeking control, something changes forever. Not only in you, but in everything around you. Because the frequency you emit is the frequency the world reflects back. Trauma is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of a transmutation that only you can pass through. For years, you waited for time to do the work, but time only froze the pain. The 3 stages that needed to be traversed, safety, release, reconstruction, never reached you in a complete way. Until now, you no longer need to wait. You no longer need to carry the weight alone. The sequence your body has always needed is finally in your hands. And it isn't a distant promise. It is a living practice, sealed in your own body, ready to be activated whenever you need it. The way back wasn't lost. It was only incomplete. And you've just received the entire trail. If this video resonated with you, leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to receive all the content that can transform your relationship with your body. If you wish to directly support Inner Temple's mission and help bring this wisdom to more people who are waiting for time instead of discovering the sequence, consider becoming a channel member. Your contribution keeps the flame of this portal of knowledge alive and allows these revelations to reach those who need them most. I want to know how you feel this transformation happening in your body right now. Write in the comments. I move through the 3 stages of trauma healing and I no longer need to wait. This affirmation seals your presence on this path of somatic reconnection. Share this video with someone who is waiting for healing to arrive, not knowing it has always been in their own body. And don't stop here. Click on the screen and dive into another transformative video on the channel. Each revelation you receive brings you closer to the freedom your body has always known how to create. Remember, for years you waited for time to erase the pain, but it only kept it alive, vibrating silently inside you. The 3 stages you've just received didn't come to console, they came to dissolve what was stuck, release what was frozen, and rebuild who you are from your own strength. The body has always known how to heal itself. You just needed the entire sequence. And it has just rewritten everything you believed about time, about pain, and about the power that has always lived within you.